She rented a millionaire boyfriend for $2 and found out he was the man she had rejected in the past. And what he did surprised everyone. Before we start, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy. She's marrying a millionaire, Emily repeated, staring at her phone like it was some kind of bad joke. Who? Your wicked sister? Asked Olivia, her best friend, chewing a croissant with her mouth full. The very one. And guess what? My dad texted me asking me to go to the wedding, and he even added, wear something decent. As if you'd show up wearing a trash bag. Emily rolled her eyes. He thinks I'm the embarrassment of the family. So are you going? Of course I am, but I'm not going alone. Emily crossed her arms with a mischievous smile. What? Are you taking the pizza delivery guy? No, I'm hiring a fake boyfriend. Just to impress that witch. A model, an actor, anyone who looks expensive. Olivia's eyes widened. Friend, you barely have enough money to buy soap. How are you going to pay for a boyfriend? Emily grabbed her phone and started searching on a classifieds website. There must be a cheaper option. 2 seconds later, she let out a scream. Oh my gosh, they charge by the hour? I'd have to work for a whole year to afford a fake boyfriend. And that doesn't even include a kiss. Olivia added, laughing loudly. Emily opened her wallet dramatically and counted. 1, 2, there. $2. 2. Olivia tried to hold back her laughter. With that, you might get a quick hug if you're lucky. Who would accept that? Emily muttered, tossing the coins onto the table. A lunatic, a ghost, a robot with a dead battery? Very funny. Emily grumbled, sighing. Then a voice came from beside them. I'll take it. Emily and Olivia turned at the same time. A tall man, in a dark suit with a sharp smile, stood there holding a cup of coffee. Sorry. What? Emily asked, suspicious. I heard your offer. $2 to pretend to be your boyfriend for a day. I'm in. Olivia's eyes widened. Who are you? A failed actor? An undercover detective? A magician? A Russian spy? Brian? And no, none of the above. I just thought it sounded fun. Emily studied him. Far too handsome to be offering his services for 2 coins. Perfect hair, eyes that could melt ice, pout, and a mysterious air like someone who'd lived through 3 soap operas. Are you kidding? No. If you want, I'll be your official boyfriend for the evening. I can even hold hands and smile like in those butter commercials. But I really only have $2. Brian shrugged and pushed the coins back to her with a smile. That covers the coffee. The rest, I'm doing for fun. Olivia whispered, Friend, this is starting to feel like the beginning of a movie. We just don't know if it's a romantic comedy or a thriller. Emily looked at Brian once more. There was something about him familiar, but she couldn't place it. Okay, Saturday. My sister's wedding. Rich, boring people. And you need to look expensive. I'm great at looking expensive, he said with a sly smile. Send me the address. I'll be there. And before she could say another word, he walked away as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Emily and Olivia stood frozen, staring after him. You just hired a boyfriend for $2, Olivia said, stunned. If he's not a thief, this is going to be a great story. Emily was still trying to process everything, but something about his face told her this wasn't a coincidence. And it wasn't. Brian knew her, and she had rejected him many years ago, but now she had just paid to go out with him. The wedding day arrived, and Emily spent the whole morning getting ready, with a dress borrowed from Olivia, shoes that pinched her feet, and makeup she redid 3 times until she felt presentable for high society, as she put it. When Brian arrived to pick her up, she almost choked. He was unrecognizable. A tailored suit that looked more expensive than 6 months of her rent, a watch that glimmered subtly on his wrist, and a fragrance that made any woman within 5 feet sigh without meaning to. Wow, was all Emily managed to say. Happy with your $2 investment? Brian smiled faintly, offering his arm. Where did you get that outfit? Did you rent it too? Let's just say I have my resources. Emily frowned. Something didn't add up, but there was no time to dig deeper. Her sister's wedding was already going to be a minefield. Questioning her fake boyfriend could wait. The wedding venue was enough to intimidate anyone. Huge gardens, decorations that cost more than a car, and guests who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a celebrity magazine. Relax, Brian whispered in her ear when he noticed her tension. You look beautiful. Thank you. And you look suspicious. Suspicious? No one looks that good for just $2. You must be up to something. Brian chuckled softly. Maybe I am. Emily didn't have time to process his answer because her sister Sarah appeared like a storm of white tulle and arrogance. Emily, what a surprise. Her tone was sweet but full of venom. And who's this? Brian, my boyfriend. Emily forced a smile. Brian offered his hand politely. Nice to meet you. Emily talks about you all the time. Oh, really? Sarah gave Emily a suspicious look. So what do you do, Brian? I work. Where do you work? In an office. Emily almost laughed at how vague that was. Sarah, clearly frustrated at not getting more details, gave a fake smile and walked away. In an office? That's the best you could come up with? Emily whispered. It worked, didn't it? During the ceremony, Emily noticed how much attention Brian was getting, not just from her, but from all the women there. He had a confident posture, the kind of presence that quietly said success, and when he smiled at her, it seemed too genuine to be fake. Have you done this before? She asked softly. Done what? Pretended to be someone's boyfriend. First time. What about you? Ever hired a fake boyfriend before? Also the first time. We're improvising together. Brian smiled. I like improvising. The most awkward moment came during the reception. Emily's father, always a charming man, decided to give a speech about family and tradition, looking directly at Emily like she was the official black sheep. And of course, we're happy that our Emily has also found someone special, he said, with the enthusiasm of someone announcing a disease. Everyone turned to look at them. Emily felt her face burning with embarrassment, but Brian stood up gracefully and raised his glass. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Emily really is special. I'm lucky she gave me a chance. The entire room sighed together. Even Sarah looked a little impressed. Emily stared at Brian like he was from another planet. How did you know my dad's last name? You mentioned it. I didn't mention it. Brian winked. I have a good memory. During dinner, the questions kept coming. How did they meet? How long had they been together? Any plans for the future? Brian answered everything like he was used to being interrogated. So, where did you two meet? Asked a curious aunt. At a coffee shop, Brian replied. Emily was complaining about life, and I thought she was authentic. Emily nearly spit out her wine. Authentic? It's a compliment, he whispered. The big twist came during the couple's toast. Everyone was standing, glasses raised, when Brian leaned close to Emily's ear. You turned me down in high school, and now you paid to go out with me. Emily froze. Her glass almost slipped from her hand. What? West High School, 2018. You were with your popular friends by the lockers when I tried to ask you to the dance. Remember? Emily's face went pale. The memories hit her like a wave. A shy, skinny boy with giant glasses and braces. She had laughed at him in front of everyone. Brian. Walker? Miller now. I changed my last name when my parents got divorced. Oh my God. Emily started laughing nervously, catching the attention of people around them. You? You can't be him. The Brian from high school was a nerd, a mess, a loser? He smiled, amused. People change, Emily. But, she waved her hands around, struggling for words. You had glasses and braces and that ridiculous Batman backpack. Contacts, braces off, and better taste. It does wonders. Emily was having an existential crisis in the middle of her sister's wedding. She laughed, stopped, looked at him, then laughed again. You planned this? Planned it? You're the one who found me at a coffee shop yelling that you needed a fake boyfriend for $2. But you recognized me. Of course I did. You still laugh the same way when you're nervous. Emily covered her mouth, horrified. Am I laughing loud? Like a happy hyena? Stop. She hit his arm, laughing even harder. The rest of the night was a whirlwind of emotions. Emily kept staring at Brian, trying to see the awkward boy she once rejected, but all she saw was a confident, successful man with a quiet charm. Do you really work in an office? She asked as they danced. I do. But what's your role? Let's just say I have a few responsibilities. You're being vague again. And you're being awfully curious for someone who paid me $2. Best $2 I ever spent, apparently. Brian laughed. You haven't seen anything yet. By the end of the evening, when he dropped her off at home, Emily was still trying to process everything. So, now that I know who you are, does that change anything? Does it for you? I'm not sure. You were different. Was it easier to reject me when I was just a nerd? Emily made a face. Are you going to hold that over me forever? Probably. Fair enough. I deserve it, Brian smiled. See you around. Wait, aren't you going to give me your number? You know where to find me. Same coffee shop, same time. And he left, while Emily stood there, confused, guilty, and oddly excited. The next morning, Olivia came running in with her phone in hand. Emily, you need to see this. What is it now? Your fake boyfriend. Olivia held up the phone, showing a huge headline, Billionaire CEO Brian Miller spotted with mystery date at glamorous event. Emily nearly fainted. Billionaire? And there's a picture. Look at you like a princess. Emily held the phone with shaking hands. The photo showed her dancing with Brian. He was looking at her with an expression that definitely didn't look fake. Olivia, I think I'm in way over my head. You think? You hired a billionaire for $2. That's like winning the lottery without even buying a ticket. Emily sat on the bed staring at the picture. Brian Miller, CEO, billionaire. And she had rejected him back in school because she didn't think he was good enough. The irony was almost poetic, and now she had no idea what to do next. Emily was still trying to come to terms with the fact she had unknowingly hired a billionaire for $2 when her phone rang. It was her boss from the restaurant. Emily, I need to speak with you. Now. Good morning to you too, Mr. Peterson. Get down here, immediately. 20 minutes later, Emily was standing in front of her boss, who was holding a printout of the news headline like it was evidence in a crime. Can you explain this? He asked, waving the paper dramatically. It's a picture of me? A picture of you with a billionaire. At some fancy event. This damages the image of our establishment. Emily blinked, confused. How does that damage anything? That makes no sense. You're just using this as an excuse to fire me. Customers might think our employees are, I don't know, gold diggers. Mr. Peterson, with all due respect, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I've heard you say ketchup counts as gourmet seasoning. Don't be insolent, you're fired. Fired? For dating someone? For lying about your life? You said you were just a regular waitress. Because I am a regular waitress. Emily threw her hands up. That was a cosmic misunderstanding. Cosmic misunderstanding? Mr. Peterson frowned. It's a long story. It involves $2 and a twist of fate. You're delusional. You're fired. Gather your things. Emily left the restaurant carrying a box with her belongings, a stained apron, a backup pair of shoes, and a plant that had been dying for 3 months. Perfect, she muttered. Now I'm unemployed because of a fake boyfriend who turned out to be a real CEO. My life's officially a soap opera. Olivia came running. I heard you got fired. That's outrageous. We're suing that restaurant. With what money? Remember, I have exactly. Emily checked her wallet. 50 cents and an expired pizza coupon. There's an obvious solution. What? Go talk to your billionaire. He's not my billionaire. It was a one-night agreement. Emily, the man has been in love with you since high school, and now you're jobless because of him. Go get some answers. An hour later, Emily stood in front of the most intimidating building in Portland. Shiny glass walls, security guards who look like models, and a lobby nicer than her whole apartment. Excuse me, she said to the receptionist. I need to speak with Brian Miller. The receptionist looked her up and down with a clear expression of gloom. Who is this nobody? Do you have an appointment? No, but then I'm afraid that's not possible. Listen here, front desk Barbie, Emily said, hands on her hips. I need to talk to him about a personal matter that involves $2, a wedding, and the fact I just got fired. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm not leaving until I talk to him. Just then the elevator doors opened and Brian stepped out, flanked by 3 men in suits. Emily? He looked genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? I came to get some answers, she said, marching toward him. Because of you, I got fired. Fired? My boss saw the photo in the paper and said I was damaging the image of the establishment. Apparently, dating billionaires goes against waitress ethics. The men in suits exchanged amused looks. Brian dismissed them with a gesture. Let's talk in my office. Oh, now you want to talk? Yesterday you ran off after dropping that bomb. Emily, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? You're the one who showed up in my life, took $2 just for fun, and forgot to mention you practically own Portland. Brian sighed and led her to the elevator. His office was bigger than Emily's apartment, with a view worth more than she could make in 10 lifetimes. "Well, now I understand why you work in an office," she said, looking around. "You are the office." "Technically, I own the company that owns the office." "Very funny. And now what? I'm unemployed because of you." Brian sat behind the desk. "I can fix that. I'll call your former boss and—" "No." Emily raised her hand. "I'm not working for someone who fires me over a photo. I have my pride." "Then what do you want me to do?" "I don't know. You're the one who caused this mess." Brian stayed silent for a moment, then smiled. "I have an offer." "What kind of offer?" "Because the last time I took one of your offers, I ended up in the headlines. I need a companion for a corporate event tonight. Something important. In return, I'll cover all your expenses for a week." Emily blinked. "All expenses? Rent, food, bills, everything. That's very generous. What's the catch?" "No catch. I just need someone genuine. Someone not interested in my money." "And you think I'm not interested in your money?" "Emily, you hired me for $2. If you cared about money, you'd have checked who I was." She thought about it. A week without worrying about bills sounded like an impossible dream. "What exactly would I have to do?" "Be yourself. Talk to a few people, smile for pictures, join me for a boring dinner." "That's all?" "Yes, that's all. I accept, but with one condition." "What's that?" "No surprises, no shocking revelations, no ex-girlfriends showing up, no finding out you own half the planet." Brian gave her a strange smile. Deal. 3 hours later, Emily was in an upscale beauty salon, being prepped by a team who treated her like a human doll. "You're gonna look stunning," said the makeup artist. "Mr. Miller has good taste in women." "We're not really dating," Emily explained. "It's just business." "Of course, dear. And I'm just a makeup artist, not a fairy godmother." The dress Brian had chosen was perfect. Elegant without being flashy, expensive without being showy. Emily looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. "Wow," she whispered. "Wow doesn't even cover it," said Brian, appearing behind her. "You look breathtaking." "Thank you. You look very billionaire yourself." They laughed, and, for the first time since the revelation, Emily felt at ease. The event was at a 5-star hotel. Important people, business conversations and Emily didn't understand, and drinks that cost more than her weekly salary. "Just smile and nod," Brian whispered. "If anyone asks about you, say you work in hospitality." "Technically, that's true. Waitress is hospitality." "Exactly." Everything was going smoothly until Emily noticed a stunning blonde woman watching her with a little too much interest. She looked like she'd been born on the pages of a fashion magazine. "Brian," the woman approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What a surprise to see you here." "Victoria." Brian's tension was obvious. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I'm one of the organizers. And who is your companion?" Emily felt a wave of discomfort. The way Victoria said companion made it sound like a questionable profession. "Emily Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "And you are?" "Victoria Blackwell, Brian's ex-fiancée." Emily almost choked on her champagne. "Ex-fiancée?" She turned to Brian. "You forgot to mention that detail." "It was a long time ago," Brian said quickly. 3 months, Victoria corrected with a poisonous smile. "Barely healed, and he's already found a replacement." Emily felt her blood boil. "Replacement? Interesting. I'd say I'm more of an upgrade." Victoria laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. "How cute. Let's see how long this lasts." And she walked away, leaving Emily fighting the urge to throw her shoe at her. "Brian Miller," Emily turned to him. "We're gonna have a little talk. Now, ex-fiancé?" Emily hissed as Brian led her to a more private corner. 3 months ago? That's not a detail you mentioned before bringing me to an event she's organizing? Emily, I can explain. Oh, really? Great, because I'm dying to know what other surprises you've got hidden. Maybe a secret child? A wife in Las Vegas? A reality show? Brian ran a hand through his hair. Victoria and I broke up because she wanted to marry for money, not for me. And why does that bother you? You are a billionaire. Exactly. I never know if someone likes me or just my bank account. Emily looked at him. Brian, I hired you for $2. If I'd known you were rich, I would have offered at least $5. He laughed despite the tension. That's exactly the point. Okay, but now your model ex-fiancée is staring at me like I'm something she wants to step on, and I get the feeling she's planning something. Victoria is complicated. Complicated like hard to deal with, or complicated like might make me mysteriously disappear. More the second one. Wonderful. Emily grabbed a champagne glass from a passing tray. Well, if I'm dying tonight, at least I'll die looking good. During dinner, Emily tried her best to act like a classy lady. The problem was her idea of classy included asking the waiter if the main course came with fries and trying to guess if the decorations cost more than a car. "Emily," Brian whispered, "you're commenting on the price of everything out loud. Sorry, but that chandelier costs more than my entire college education. It's fascinating how you rich folks spend money." "You rich folks? You know, your kind? Homo economicus superioris." The man sitting next to them, a well-known investor, burst out laughing. "She's hilarious. Where did you find her, Brian?" "In a coffee shop," Emily answered before Brian could. "He rented me for $2. The table went completely silent. "I mean," Brian tried to recover. No, Emily continued cheerfully. "That's exactly what happened. I needed a fake boyfriend. He was drinking coffee, and the rest is history. Best investment I ever made." Everyone at the table burst into laughter. Apparently, Emily's brutal honesty was refreshing in a room full of small talk and polished masks. "You have to tell us more," said an older woman, clearly entertained. "Well, it all started because my sister was marrying a millionaire, and I didn't want to show up alone and have everyone asking me when I'd get a boyfriend or have kids. And I was like, people, I'm 23, not 80. Brian watched her with a mix of panic and admiration. Emily was talking with her hands, telling embarrassing stories about her family, and had the whole table completely engaged. And then my dad said, "Wear something decent." Emily imitated her father's deep voice, "like I normally walk around in a trash bag." More laughter. Across the room, Victoria watched it all with an increasingly sour expression. "Emily," Brian whispered, "maybe you should." "What? Talk less? Be more mysterious?" She turned to him with a mischievous smile. "Brian, darling, you hired me to be authentic. This is Emily Thompson, unfiltered." "That's exactly why she's perfect," said the investor. "Finally, someone real in this room full of facades." After dinner, while people mingled for networking, Emily continued being Emily. She asked a CEO how he could sleep at night, knowing he made in a day what others earn in a year. She asked a socialite why anyone would need 17 of the same handbag in different colors, and she gave unsolicited investment advice based on common sense and women's intuition. "You're all making things way too complicated," she told a group of businessmen. "Investing is like dating. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If it's too much trouble, it's not worth it. And if your mom wouldn't approve, run." "That's surprisingly wise," one of them murmured. Brian watched her from across the room, completely captivated. Emily wasn't trying to impress anyone, wasn't choosing her words carefully, and somehow that made her the most interesting person at the event. "She's different," said a voice beside him. Brian turned and saw Victoria walking up. "Victoria, relax. I'm not here to start trouble. I'm genuinely curious about your new friend." Emily is hard to explain. "I can see that. She just told Johnson he should invest in food trucks because street food always sells, and now he's actually thinking about it." Brian looked over at Emily, who was enthusiastically explaining something about the food truck economy. "She has her own kind of logic." "And you're in love with her." Brian turned to Victoria. "What?" "Please, Brian, I've known you for 5 years. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you're looking at her." "It's complicated. The best stories always are." Victoria took a sip of champagne. "Can I make a suggestion?" "You're going to anyway. Bring her to brunch with me tomorrow." Brian looked at her like she'd suggested they go skydiving. "You want to have brunch with Emily? Just the two of you?" "I want to get to know her better. Woman to woman without you around." "Victoria, I know you. What's the plan?" "No plan, I promise." She gave him an innocent smile. "Just good old curiosity. No, Brian, if she's as special as she seems, she can handle me. And if she can't, well, better to find out now." Just then, Emily appeared beside them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Brian, you won't believe it. I just convinced 3 people to invest in solar energy by comparing the sun to a reliable boyfriend. It shows up every day and never lets you down." Victoria laughed genuinely for the first time that night. "Emily, may I invite you to something?" "Of course." "How about brunch tomorrow? Just the 2 of us. I know a lovely place." Emily looked at Brian, who seemed to be having a quiet panic attack. "Really? You want to have brunch with me? Absolutely. I love getting to know interesting people. I'd love to. Emily smiled. Sounds like fun, like a girl's day out. Brian knew he was in trouble. Emily had no idea what was going on, and Victoria was definitely up to something. Emily, he tried to step in. Maybe. Oh no, Emily wagged her finger at him. You're not ruining my first chance at having a rich friend. Just imagine the stories she must have. Victoria smiled sweetly. Oh, darling, I have plenty of stories, especially about Brian. And at that moment, Brian knew the brunch would be an epic disaster. But Emily looked so happy that he couldn't bring himself to ruin it. Great, he sighed. A girl's brunch. It's going to be wonderful. Emily clapped her hands. What time? 10 a.m. I'll send you the address. Later that night, as they were leaving, Emily was still thrilled. I loved it. Everyone was so nice. And Victoria even invited me to brunch. Emily, about Victoria. What? She seems great. A bit intimidating, but I think we'll get along. Brian looked out the car window and silently prayed to every saint he could think of. This was going to go very, very wrong. Emily woke up on Saturday full of excitement. She was finally going to a fancy brunch with a former model, who just happened to be her fake billionaire boyfriend's ex-fiancé. But she wasn't completely naive. She knew Victoria was up to something. My life really has turned into a soap opera, she muttered, picking out the least inappropriate outfit in her closet. The restaurant Victoria had chosen was exactly the kind of place Emily would never go to on her own. Minimalist decor, dishes that cost more than her rent, and a crowd that looked like they walked straight out of a high-society gossip magazine. Victoria was already there, surrounded by 3 women who looked like her clones, blonde, rail-thin, and with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Emily. Victoria waved like they were best friends. Come meet the girls. Emily walked over, trying not to trip over her own feet. Hi, everyone. This is Madison, heir to the Whitmore Labs fortune, Sophia, who owns a chain of spas, and Jennifer, who's married to Senator Thompson. Nice, Emily gave a genuine smile. I'm Emily, the unemployed ex-waitress who rented a billionaire for $2. Awkward silence. How fun, Madison said with a stiff smile. And how did you meet our dear Brian? Asked Sophia, in the tone of someone conducting an interrogation. Well, I was complaining about my life in a coffee shop when he showed up and offered to be my fake boyfriend. I thought he was crazy, but turns out he was just a bored billionaire. Fake boyfriend? Jennifer's eyes widened. Yep, Brian agreed to it for $2. Best deal of my life. Victoria gave her a sweet but sharp smile. What an interesting story. So, you don't have a real relationship? We have fun, he pays my bills, I make him laugh. It's like a business deal with emotional benefits. Emotional benefits? Madison laughed. How modern. And you don't feel, I don't know, awkward? Asked Sophia. Being supported by him? Emily thoughtfully chewed a piece of croissant. Awkward? Why? He offered. I accepted. It's kind of like being an influencer, except instead of selling makeup, I offer genuine company. Genuine, Victoria repeated. Interesting word. Well, I am who I am. I don't pretend to be sophisticated, I don't know etiquette, and yesterday I asked the waiter if that $200 dish came with free refills of soda. The women exchanged horrified looks. And Brian? Accepts that? Jennifer asked. Accepts he loves it? He said he'd never met anyone so... What was the word? Oh yes, refreshing. Refreshing, Victoria repeated with a tone that could freeze the room. Yes, like cold water on a hot day, or ice cream when you have PMS. Or finding forgotten money in your jeans pocket. Madison nearly choked. Did you just compare your relationship with Brian to finding money in your pocket? Hey, it's a great feeling. You all are too serious. Relax. Victoria decided to go on the offensive. Emily, dear, don't you think you're a bit out of your element? Brian is used to a certain level. Level of what? Sophistication, elegance, women who know how to behave in society. Emily laughed out loud. Oh, I see. You're worried I'm not fancy enough. Well, Sophia hesitated. Ladies, relax. I know I'm not on your level. You're like convertible Mercedes. I'm more like a second-hand bicycle. But you know the difference? What? They asked in unison. The bicycle is more fun, more eco-friendly, and when it breaks, you can fix it quickly. The Mercedes costs a fortune just to look at. Victoria was visibly annoyed. Emily, I don't think you understand the pressure Brian is under. He needs someone who can accompany him to important events, someone who knows how to talk to influential people. Like I did yesterday, when I convinced 3 CEOs to invest in solar energy using dating analogies. That was luck. That was authenticity. You're also worried about saying the right thing, that you forget to say something interesting. Jennifer leaned forward. And you think this authenticity will last? Brian has dated some of the most elegant women in the country, and he broke up with all of them, Emily pointed out. Including our dear Victoria here. Maybe the problem isn't a lack of elegance but too much pretense. The bomb had been dropped. Victoria flushed red. Excuse me? Look, Victoria, you're beautiful, rich, sophisticated. But let's be honest, if you were really that perfect, you'd still be engaged to Brian, wouldn't you? We broke up over irreconcilable differences. Like him finding out you were more interested in his credit card than in him? Dead silence. Emily? Victoria said through clenched teeth. I don't think you have any idea who you're talking to. Oh, I do. I'm talking to my fake boyfriend's ex-fiancé, who organized this brunch to try to intimidate me, who brought her friends as an audience, and who's finding out that intimidating a former waitress is harder than she thought. Emily stood up calmly. Ladies, it's been a pleasure. Victoria, thanks for the brunch. And just so you know, Brian told me why you two broke up. It wasn't irreconcilable differences. It was because he found out you were selling his company's inside information to competitors. Victoria turned completely pale. He told you that? He did. And you know what else he said? That you two were never really close. That you never even saw him without his shirt because you always insisted on making love in the dark. That's, Victoria stammered. A lie? Well, if it's a lie, then you knew each other better than he said. And if it's not a lie, well, that explains a lot about your relationship. Emily picked up her bag gracefully. Goodbye, ladies. And Victoria? Next time you plan an ambush, pick an easier target. And she left the restaurant with her head held high, leaving 4 women in total shock. 10 minutes later, Brian came running up. Emily was sitting on the curb, eating a hot dog she'd bought from a street vendor. Emily, how did it go? Are you okay? Great. She smiled brightly. I think I made some new friends. Really, I crushed them. It was epic. In the car, Brian couldn't stop smiling. Tell me everything, word for word. Emily recounted the entire story, complete with impressions of the women's faces. Brian laughed so hard he had to pull the car over. You're amazing, he said, looking into her eyes. I'm a survivor. No, you're so much more than that. There was something different in the way he looked at her. More intense. More real. Emily felt her heart race. The tension in the car was palpable. Brian, she slowly leaned toward him. Brian didn't move. Their lips were almost touching when Brian pulled away abruptly. I'm sorry? I can't. Emily was confused and hurt. Why not? It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. Brian sighed. Emily, you don't understand. Whatever this is between us, it can't happen. Why not? Because you deserve someone better. And before she could say anything, he started the car and drove her home in silence. Emily stood on the sidewalk, watching him drive away, completely confused. What on earth had just happened? She woke up Monday morning with a clear thought pounding in her head. Enough. Enough of being treated like entertainment, enough of strange arrangements, and most of all, enough of Brian Miller and his emotional complications. The rejection in the car still stung like a slap in the face. Why had she fooled herself into thinking something real could grow between them? She grabbed her phone and typed a direct message. Brian, our arrangement is over. Thank you for the experience, but I'd rather go back to my simple life. I don't need your financial help anymore. We'll go our separate ways. Emily? She hit send before she could change her mind. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. Brian? Emily declined the call. It rang again. She declined it again. On the 3rd try, she turned the phone off completely. There, she said to herself. Problem solved. The next few days were a roller coaster of plain, raw reality. Emily went back to her usual routine, waking up early, job hunting, eating instant noodles, counting coins for the bus fare. This was her real life. No luxury, no perks, no expensive dresses. And that was okay. At least that's what she kept telling herself. Meanwhile, Brian was finding out that his luxury-filled life had lost all meaning. The office felt dull, meetings were torture, and even the expensive coffee tasted like cardboard. Mr. Miller, said Margaret, his secretary, on Wednesday, you've canceled 8 meetings this week. I'm not in the mood for meetings. You're not in the mood for anything. Yesterday you yelled at the printer for being too slow. Brian knew he was being ridiculous, but he couldn't stop thinking about Emily. He tried calling her constantly, but her phone was always off or out of range. Emily, it's me. Please call me back. I need to explain what happened, he said into the void. Emily, I know I messed up. I just want to apologize, he tried in another message. Please don't ignore me like this. At least let me talk to you, he begged. Emily listened to the messages but never replied. By the second Friday, Emily finally got a job at a 24-hour convenience store. The pay was low, the uniform awful, but it was honest work. You'll work from 2 to 10 in the evening, explained the manager, a tired-looking man in his 50s. It's quiet, just a few night customers. Perfect, Emily smiled stiffly. I love the afternoon shift. At first, she even enjoyed it. Her coworkers were funny, the job was simple, and no one asked about billionaires or weird deals. Brian's phone calls kept coming, morning, afternoon, and night. Every time, straight to voicemail. Emily, it's me again. Please, just give me a minute to talk. I know I handled things badly. I just need a chance to make it right. Please don't shut me out like this. Emily listened to them, but still didn't respond. On the Friday of the second week, she was leaving the store, laughing with Carlos, a coworker who always made her laugh with stories about strange customers. And then the woman wanted to return an energy drink because she said it wasn't energetic enough. Carlos said, mimicking the customer's voice. Emily laughed out loud. People are unbelievable. Emily, you should go out more. You're always working or studying. What about grabbing a beer on Saturday? I don't know, Carlos. I'm kind of complicated when it comes to relationships. Who said anything about a relationship? Just a beer between friends. Emily was considering it when a black car pulled up sharply in front of them. Brian jumped out like a storm, looking serious. Emily. Brian? Her eyes widened. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Carlos looked back and forth between them, sensing the tension. Emily, are you okay? I'm fine, she said quickly. Carlos, this is someone I know. Brian, this is Carlos, my coworker. Brian stared at Carlos with a look that could melt steel. Coworker? Yeah, man, and you are? Carlos asked, clearly annoyed by the glare. No one important, Emily answered before Brian could. Carlos, I'll see you Monday. Everything's fine. Carlos hesitated, but finally walked away after waving at Emily. What do you want, Brian? Emily crossed her arms. I want to talk. You're not answering my calls. Because there's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is, about what happened in the car. Nothing happened. You made it clear you don't want anything with me. Brian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Emily, you don't understand. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated, Brian. I'm simple. I like things simple. But what we have isn't simple. We don't have anything, Emily said firmly. We had a deal, and it's over. Now we each go our own way. Emily. Brian, I'm rebuilding my life. I have a new job, nice coworkers, a routine that makes sense. I'm fine like this. You're fine going out with that guy? Emily looked at him in disbelief. Are you jealous of Carlos? Seriously? It's not jealousy. It's jealousy, and you have no right to be jealous. You turned me down, remember? Brian opened his mouth to argue, but Emily kept going. Listen, Brian, you're an amazing man, successful with everything any woman could want, but you're scared of real feelings, and I'm not going to sit around waiting for you to deal with your emotional baggage. Emily, please? No, go home, Brian. Find someone from your world, someone who understands your complications. I just want peace. Emily walked into the shop without looking back, leaving Brian standing on the sidewalk like a statue. Inside, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. I like him, she thought. I really do, but this was never going to work. We come from 2 different worlds. He needs someone sophisticated, and all I know how to be is myself. She glanced out the window and saw Brian still standing there, looking at the store. This is for the best, she whispered, but her heart disagreed. Emily came home after seeing Brian feeling completely drained. She collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had just happened. Olivia, she yelled. I need emergency therapy. Olivia came out of the kitchen with a bowl of popcorn. From that tone, I'm guessing this has to do with a certain complicated billionaire. He showed up at my job, out of nowhere, like a stalker in a suit. Tell me everything. Don't skip any juicy details. Emily recapped the whole meeting, including Brian's obvious jealousy of Carlos and their tense conversation in front of the store. Let me get this straight, Olivia said, chewing thoughtfully. The richest man in Portland showed up at your work because he was jealous of a guy who sells energy drinks? Basically, yes. And you told him to leave because he's too complicated. Olivia, the man can't even kiss me without having an existential crisis. Girl. Olivia sat down facing her. Can I say something? Go ahead. You're being dumb. Thanks for the support. No, really, Emily, the man is clearly in love with you. Has been since high school. He's just scared. Scared of what? Of you finding out he's human. Think about it. He's spent his whole life being judged for his money. Then you come along, treat him like a regular guy, and now he doesn't know how to deal with it. Emily frowned. Olivia, are you defending him? I'm defending love. Olivia threw her hands up dramatically. Emily, when was the last time you truly liked someone? Well, exactly. Never. And now someone shows up who makes you laugh, treats you well, protects you, and you're going to walk away because he's a little neurotic. A little neurotic? Olivia, he's got more locks than a bank vault. So what? Everybody has issues. You do too. Remember when you didn't leave the house for 3 months because that jerk ex said you were too intense? Emily made a face. That was different. No, it wasn't. You were afraid to be yourself. Now Brian is afraid to be himself. You two are perfect for each other. Olivia, Emily, you could be the person who helps him feel normal, and he could be the person who makes you feel special. It's like mutual therapy, but with kissing. Emily laughed despite herself. Mutual therapy with kissing? Exactly. Look, you can sit here complaining that he's complicated, or you can go find him and see if it's worth untangling. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Emily, you were the happiest I've ever seen you for weeks. Since he left, you've been miserable. I'm not miserable. Girl, you had ice cream for breakfast today. Ice cream for breakfast. Emily sighed. Maybe you're right. Of course I am. Now go find your neurotic billionaire and fix this. But what if he doesn't want to talk to me? Emily, the man showed up at your job like a jealous lunatic. He wants to talk. All right, Emily stood up, determined. I'm going to find him. That's what I like to hear. Go warrior. The next morning, Emily called Brian's office. Miller Corporation, good morning. Hi. I need to speak with Brian Miller. Mr. Miller isn't available at the moment. May I take a message? When will he be back? I'm sorry, I can't give out that information. Emily tried 5 more times that week. Always the same answer. Brian wasn't available. This is strange, she told Olivia. Where could a billionaire be that no one knows when he's coming back? Maybe he traveled, or maybe he's avoiding me on purpose. Emily decided to investigate on her own. She went to the Miller Corporation building and tried a different approach. Hi, she said to the receptionist. I'm Emily Thompson. I came to return something to Mr. Miller. What's your name again? Emily Thompson. He'll know who I am. The receptionist made a few calls. Mr. Miller is out of town. Can I take a message? Out of town since when? I can't give out that information. Emily walked out frustrated. Brian had literally disappeared. That night at work, she told Carlos everything. Girl, you should hire a private detective, he joked. Very funny. Or, Carlos paused, thinking. My sister works at the front desk of a private hospital. She always knows the gossip about the upper class. Hospital? Yeah, she said she saw the name Miller on the visitors list this week. Someone in his family is admitted. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Which hospital? Portland General. VIP wing. Carlos, you're a genius. The next day, Emily went to the hospital. She didn't have a plan, but she needed to find out what was happening. I'm here to visit Mrs. Miller, she told the receptionist. Full name? Emily panicked. She didn't know Brian's mother's name. Brian Miller's mother? The receptionist gave her a suspicious look. Are you family? I'm his daughter-in-law. Emily lied shamelessly. Room 412. But she's asleep. Only family members are allowed in. Emily went up to room 412 and peered through the small window in the door. A middle-aged woman lay in bed, connected to several machines, and next to her, in an uncomfortable chair, Brian was asleep. He looked exhausted, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, deep dark circles under his eyes. He didn't look anything like the confident CEO she knew. Emily knocked softly and walked in. Brian woke up with a start. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I came to find you. No one knew where you were." "How did you find me?" "Amateur investigative journalism." She glanced at the woman in the bed. "How is she?" Brian sighed. "Stable, but it was a big scare. She had a heart attack last week." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Emily, we weren't even talking anymore." "But I could have at least been here." Brian looked at her in surprise. "You would have come?" "Of course, you idiot." They sat in silence for a moment, watching his mother's steady breathing. "She's beautiful," Emily said softly. "She would love you," Brian smiled for the first time. "She always said I needed to find a woman who wasn't impressed by money. She has good taste." "Emily, about what happened in the car." "Brian, you don't have to explain." "I do." He stood and looked at her. "I pulled away because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared you'd realize that under all this success, I'm still the insecure nerd from high school. Scared you'd find out I'm just a normal guy with an abnormal bank account." Emily felt her heart tighten. "You're the only person who treats me like a human being, not like a billionaire. And that terrifies me because I've never wanted anything as much as I want you." "Then why didn't you kiss me?" "Because I knew that if I kissed you, I wouldn't be able to let you go." Emily slowly moved closer to him. "And who said I want to go?" "Emily." "Brian, I was scared too. Scared I wouldn't be good enough for you, that I wouldn't be able to keep up with your world. You're better than my entire world." This time, when Emily leaned in to kiss him, Brian didn't pull away. He pulled her close and kissed her, as if she were the air he needed to breathe. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," she answered with a smile. "Even though I'm complicated?" "Especially because you're complicated. Someone has to uncomplicate you." Brian laughed and kissed her again, and for the first time in weeks, Emily felt like she was exactly where she belonged. In the bed, Brian's mother opened her eyes slightly and smiled before drifting back to sleep. Her son had finally found someone special. The following days at the hospital turned into an oddly intimate routine for Emily and Brian. They took turns caring for his mother, Margaret Miller, who was slowly recovering from the heart attack. Emily discovered that Margaret was a retired teacher with a sharp sense of humor even when unwell, and had clearly raised Brian to be a kind man. "So you're the famous Emily," Margaret said on Tuesday morning, finally awake and clear enough to talk. "Brian doesn't stop talking about you." Emily glanced at Brian, who blushed. "Oh, really?" "He said you're the bravest woman he's ever met, and also the most stubborn." "Hey," Emily protested, laughing. "Stubborn is a positive trait." "I said determined." Brian defended himself. "Brian, dear, you said stubborn." Margaret smiled. "But you said it fondly." Emily liked Margaret right away. She had that quiet wisdom that comes from having lived a lot and knowing what really matters in life. During the long hours at the hospital, Emily and Brian talked more than they had the entire time they'd known each other. No social events, no outside pressure, just the two of them, hospital coffee, and time to be honest. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said on Wednesday night as they shared a terrible sandwich from the hospital cafeteria. "Of course." "Why did you really take my $2 that day?" Brian smiled and stirred his coffee. "Do you want the romantic answer or the real one?" "Both." "The romantic answer is that I recognized you right away and wanted a second chance. The real answer is I was having a really bad day." "What do you mean?" "I had just come out of a meeting where 5 people spent 2 hours flattering me over a terrible idea, just because I'm rich. I felt completely disconnected from people. Then I heard you complaining about needing a fake boyfriend for $2 and thought, finally someone who doesn't know who I am. And you just wanted to feel normal." "Exactly. You offered me $2 to just be myself for one night. I couldn't resist." Emily laughed. "So I saved you from the existential boredom of being rich." "Something like that." "You're welcome." On Thursday, while Margaret was asleep, Brian finally opened up about his childhood. Emily noticed he tensed up whenever high school came up, so she gently pushed. "Brian, can I ask about before?" What you were like in high school. He was quiet for a long time, staring out the hospital window. It's not a pretty story. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. No, I do. You deserve to know. Brian took a deep breath. I was different. Way too skinny, huge glasses, braces. My mom didn't have much money, so I wore secondhand clothes that never fit right. Emily felt her chest tighten, and people were cruel. Very cruel. There was this group of boys who called me Professor Gadget because I was good at math. They'd hide my books, shove my desk, put gum in my hair. That's awful. The worst wasn't the boys. It was the girls who laughed when they did it, or acted like I didn't exist when I tried to talk to them. Emily swallowed hard, remembering the day she had turned him down without even knowing him. Brian? You weren't the worst, Emily. You were just the one that hurt the most. Why? Because I really liked you. I spent weeks working up the courage to ask you to the dance. I practiced in the mirror, wrote notes I never gave you, and when I finally spoke to you, I laughed in your face. You laughed and said, "Seriously? Are you being serious?" And your friends laughed too. And I realized that to you the idea of going out with me was so ridiculous, it was funny. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Brian, I'm so sorry. No, don't be. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because that moment changed me. What do you mean? I decided no one would ever make me feel small again. I spent the next few years reinventing myself. I worked out, got contacts, wore better clothes. I studied how successful people spoke, how they moved, how they acted. You rebuilt yourself. Completely. And it worked. In college, people respected me. In business, they feared me. I got everything I ever wanted. But, Brian smiled sadly, but deep down, I was still that 16-year-old kid, scared of being rejected. That's why I could never have real relationships. Part of me was always thinking, if she finds out who I really am, she'll laugh and walk away. And with me? With you it was different because you already did that. You'd already rejected me in the worst way. So in a strange way, I felt safe. You couldn't hurt me more than you already had. Emily reached for his hand. But you know I've changed too, right? I do. And you know what's funny? The woman I fell in love with has nothing in common with the girl who turned me down in high school. You've grown. You've become kind, brave, real, more real than anyone I know. Brian? Emily, you make me want to be the most honest version of myself. Not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just me. Emily leaned in and kissed him gently. I love just you, Brian. Even with all the baggage and neuroses, especially with the baggage and neuroses, they're part of who you are. They held each other in silence, and Emily felt a connection with Brian that went far beyond physical attraction or chemistry. It was something deep, built on honesty and mutual acceptance. Emily, Brian whispered, thank you. For what? For letting me be human. On Friday morning, Emily was helping Margaret eat when a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. Excuse me, nurse, I know it's not visiting hours, but I'm very close to the family. Emily froze. She knew that voice. Victoria Blackwell appeared at the door with an expensive bouquet and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Brian, darling, I heard about your mother and came right away. Brian stood up with an expression Emily couldn't read. Victoria, what are you doing here? I came to see Margaret, of course. Victoria stepped closer to the bed. Mrs. Miller, how are you feeling? Margaret looked at Victoria with polite coldness. Much better, thank you. That's wonderful. I brought these flowers to brighten up the room. Emily watched with growing irritation. Victoria was clearly putting on a show, acting like the perfect devoted daughter-in-law. Victoria, Brian said carefully, that's very kind of you, but, oh, it's nothing. I've always thought of Margaret as a second mother. Emily nearly choked. Margaret raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the bold lie. How interesting, Margaret said, because in the 5 years you dated my son, you visited me, let's see, twice? Victoria flushed slightly. Well, I was always very busy with work. Of course. Emily couldn't take it anymore. Victoria, may I ask how you found out Margaret was here? Victoria turned to Emily as if noticing her for the first time. Oh, hello, Emily. Word travels quickly in our community. Your community? The business community. We all look out for each other. How sweet, Emily said with a pointed smile. And here I thought you were just here to stir up trouble. Trouble? Victoria laughed, clearly forcing it. Why would I cause trouble? I don't know. Maybe because you're suing Emily over an Instagram post? Brian said, his voice dangerously calm. Victoria turned even redder. That's a separate legal matter. It's about revenge, Emily said bluntly. You're upset because Brian chose the ex-waitress over the ex-model. Emily, Brian gently warned. No, Brian. Emily stood up and faced Victoria. Let's be honest here. Victoria, you broke up with Brian because you wanted an ATM for a husband, not a partner. And now you can't stand that you lost. I haven't lost anything, Victoria said coldly. Brian will get tired of you. He always does. Victoria, Margaret said firmly from the bed, I think you should leave. Mrs. Miller, now. There was no arguing with that tone. Victoria glanced around the room and realized she was clearly being dismissed. Well, she said, trying to maintain her dignity, I hope you recover quickly, Margaret. Thank you for the flowers, Margaret replied politely. Victoria walked out with her head held high, but Emily saw the furious expression on her face reflected in the glass door. Wow, Margaret said once Victoria was gone. Did she really come here to win my son back in a hospital room? Apparently, Emily sighed. Some people are shameless. Emily, Brian said, taking her hand, thank you for standing up for me. Always. That's what real girlfriends do. Margaret smiled. Real girlfriends? I thought you two were still in the it's complicated stage. Emily and Brian looked at each other and laughed. I think it's official now, Brian said. Finally, Margaret said with a dramatic sigh. Now I can recover in peace, knowing my son won't die alone, surrounded by gold diggers. Mom, what? It's true. Emily laughed and kissed Margaret's forehead. You and I are going to get along just fine, mother-in-law. I already like you, daughter-in-law. And for the first time since the heart attack, Brian felt like everything was going to be okay. The next morning, Brian walked into the hospital room with 2 coffees and a determined look Emily was already starting to recognize. It was the same look he had before closing major business deals. Good morning, beautiful ladies, he said, handing Emily a coffee and kissing his mother's forehead. Good morning, dear, Margaret replied. You look like you have something on your mind. Always sharp, Brian smiled. Emily, I need to talk to you about something. Emily took a sip of the coffee and made a face. If this is about moving into a mansion, the answer is no. It's not about a mansion. It's about work. Brian, just hear me out. There's a position open at the company that would be perfect for you. Public Relations Department. You're a natural with people. Authentic. Creative. Brian, no. Why not? Emily sighed. Because I don't want people thinking I only got the job because I'm dating the boss. But you could get the job on your own merit. Brian, I work at a convenience store. I have no experience in corporate public relations. You verbally took Victoria down in front of 3 socialites. That's top-level PR. Margaret laughed from the bed. He has a point. You two are impossible. Emily shook her head. Brian, I appreciate the offer, but I want to build my career on my own. My way, in my own time. Brian looked at her with a mix of frustration and admiration. You're the only person I know who would turn down a 6-figure job. I didn't know it was 6 figures, Emily blinked. Still no. Fine, Brian sighed. But I have another proposal. Oh my goodness. What now? I want everyone to know we're dating. Officially. No more secrets, no more fake arrangements. I want to tell the whole world that Emily Thompson is my girlfriend. Emily nearly choked on her coffee. Brian, we can do a press release, show up together at public events, maybe even give an interview. Stop! Emily raised her hands. Brian, this is too fast for me. Why? Because I'm still processing all this. A week ago we weren't even speaking. Now we're really together. And you want to announce it to the world? Brian looked hurt. Are you ashamed of me? Of course not. I'm ashamed of myself. What do you mean? Emily got up and started pacing the room. Brian, you're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. I work at a convenience store. People will think I'm with you for your money. So what? Who cares what people think? I care. Emily stopped in front of him. Brian, I need more time to get used to this, to make sure it's real. Emily, of course it's real. For you, maybe. But I've never dated someone famous. I've never had to deal with the press, with gossip, with people analyzing my every move. Margaret watched them from the bed with interest. Can I give my opinion? Of course, Mom. Emily's right. Relationships need time to grow before facing outside pressure. Thank you, Margaret. But, Margaret continued, Brian is also right. Hiding the relationship could do more harm than good. Emily and Brian looked at each other. What do you suggest? Brian asked. Keep it private for now, Margaret said, but set a timeline, a month, maybe 2, enough time for Emily to feel secure. 1 month, Emily said quickly. Give me a month to get used to the idea. Brian took her hands. 1 month. But after that, I want to shout to the whole world that you're mine. Deal. 3 days later, Margaret was discharged from the hospital. Brian insisted on hiring a private nurse, but Margaret firmly refused. I'm not an invalid, Brian. I just had a little heart issue. Little issue? Mom, you almost nothing. I'm fine. And both of you need to stop treating me like porcelain. That evening, Brian arranged a romantic dinner to celebrate his mother's recovery and to finally have a night just for the two of them. He chose a small, quiet restaurant far from the places where he was usually recognized. This is perfect, Emily said, looking around. Cozy, intimate. And no photographers, Brian added. Exactly. They ordered wine, talked about everything and nothing, and for the first time in weeks, Emily allowed herself to completely relax. Brian, she said over dessert, can I tell you something? Of course. I'm scared. Of what? Emily played with her dessert spoon. Of getting hurt. Of hurting you. Of all this going wrong. Emily, I've never felt like this about anyone, she went on. It's scary. Every time you smile at me, my heart does something strange. Every time you touch me, I forget how to breathe. And it terrifies me because if it falls apart, it'll hurt more than anything I've ever felt. Brian took her hand across the table. Emily, I'm scared too. Really? Terrified. You're the first person I truly love. Not the idea of you, not what you represent, but you. And if I mess it up, you won't mess it up. How do you know? Because you're a good man, Brian Miller. And good men don't ruin good things. They were leaning in to kiss when a familiar voice cut in. How sweet. Emily and Brian quickly pulled apart. Victoria was standing by the table with a sly smile. Victoria, Brian said through clenched teeth. What do you want? Relax, Brian. I just came to say hello to the happy couple. How did you find us? Emily asked. Portland isn't that big, darling. Emily stood slowly. Victoria, are you following us? Following us? Victoria laughed. That's just paranoia. I have dinner here every week. That's not true, Emily said calmly. This place doesn't even have a Michelin star, and you wouldn't eat here unless it were the last restaurant on earth. Victoria turned slightly red. How dare you? How I dare? Emily gave her a sweet smile. Victoria, honey, you really need a new hobby. Following people isn't a good one. I'm not following anyone. No? Then how would you explain showing up at the hospital yesterday and now here at this restaurant? A cosmic coincidence? Brian watched Emily with a mix of amusement and admiration. Emily, Victoria said, her voice low and tense, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Sure I do. I'm dealing with a 32-year-old woman who still hasn't gotten over her ex. Honestly, it's kind of sad. Sad? Victoria, have you ever tried therapy? Because being obsessed with an ex isn't healthy. There are professionals who can help with that. Victoria was furious. You're just a gold digger, nothing more. And you're just a bitter ex-fiancé, Emily replied evenly. But at least I'm a happy gold digger. You're just an unhappy ex. How dare you? Victoria, Brian stood up. You need to leave. Now. Brian, you can't talk to me like that. I can, and I just did. Stop following us, stop stirring up drama, and go get your own life. Victoria looked from Brian to Emily, clearly frustrated. This isn't over, she finally said. For us, it ended a long time ago, Brian replied. Victoria stormed off, and Emily sat back down. Well, she said, taking a sip of wine, that was fun. You were amazing, Brian laughed. Being obsessed with your ex isn't healthy? Where do you come up with this stuff? Morning talk shows. They're very educational. Brian kissed her hand. I love you. I love you too, even with the crazy ex-fiancé included. Speaking of which, about the lawsuit. Brian, I don't want to talk about Victoria today. I want to talk about us. Then let's talk about us. And they spent the rest of the evening doing exactly that. The next morning after their romantic dinner, Emily woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. Something about the night before was bothering her, but she couldn't quite figure out what. Maybe it was Victoria showing up. Or maybe it was the fear she had confessed to Brian. When she arrived at work at the convenience store, Carlos immediately noticed her mood. Man, you look like you just had a fight with your billionaire boyfriend. We didn't fight. Yet. Yet? That doesn't sound good. Emily sighed as she straightened up the shelves. Carlos, do you think two people from completely different worlds can actually work out? Depends. Do you love each other? Yes. Do you respect each other? Yes. Do you have fun together? A lot. Then what's the problem? The problem is that he wants to make our relationship public, and I don't know if I'm ready for that. Carlos stopped stocking the drinks. Emily, can I tell you something? Sure. Are you afraid of what other people will think, or are you afraid of truly committing? His question hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. I don't know. Because, look, running from a relationship because you're scared of being judged is one thing. Running because you're scared of opening your heart? That's something else entirely. Emily stayed quiet, letting her friend's words sink in. That night, Brian showed up at the store during her shift with a determined look on his face. We need to talk, he said without any small talk. Brian, I'm working. Emily, we can't keep doing this. Doing what? You pulling away every time things get serious between us. Emily felt a wave of irritation rise. I'm not pulling away. Aren't you? You turned down the job. You don't want to go public with us. And last night when Victoria showed up, you got tense with me too. I was tense with her, not with you. Emily, you're looking for excuses to keep your distance. That's not true. Then explain to me why every time I bring up the future, you change the subject. Emily stopped organizing the shelves and looked straight at him. Because the future scares me, Brian, okay? I'm terrified. Why? Because you're rich, successful, powerful, and I'm just a regular girl working in a convenience store. Emily, not this again. It's not just about the money, she burst out. It's about expectations. Your life is photographed, analyzed, talked about. Every outfit I wear, every word I say, every move I make, it's all going to be judged. So what? So what? I don't know if I can handle that pressure. What if I'm not good enough? What if I embarrass you? What if, stop. What if you realize you could be with someone better? Emily, stop. Brian's voice echoed through the empty store. Emily froze, eyes filled with tears. Emily, Brian said more calmly, you're sabotaging our relationship because you're afraid of things that might never even happen. But they might happen, or they might not. Emily, you're asking for a guarantee I can't give you. No relationship comes with guarantees. Brian, no, listen. I love you. I love your loud laugh. I love how you treat everyone the same. I love how you make me feel like a regular guy. But I can't keep proving that to you over and over. Emily felt her heart break. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to decide if you want to be with me or not. For real. No fear, no excuses, no conditions. I do want to be with you. Then show me. Stop running, stop making excuses, and be my real girlfriend. Emily looked into his eyes and saw determination, but also exhaustion. He was worn out from fighting her fears. And what if I can't? Then maybe we're not meant to be. The words hit like a bomb. Emily felt like the ground had just disappeared from under her feet. Brian? Emily, I'm going home. When you decide what you want, call me. And he walked out, leaving Emily alone in the shop, crying between shelves of candy. Brian drove home on autopilot, his heart heavy. He had pushed Emily into a corner, and now he regretted it. But he also knew he couldn't keep proving his love while she kept running away. At home, he collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. That's when he saw the $2 bill on the coffee table, the one Emily had tried to use to pay him on their first day. He'd kept it as a reminder. He picked it up and gave a sad smile. $2. The best investment of his life. For $2, he got the chance to truly know Emily, to fall in love with her, to learn what it meant to love and be loved for who you really are. It didn't matter if she was scared. It didn't matter if the whole world thought they didn't make sense. That $2 bill gave him something money couldn't buy. True love. And he wasn't giving up without a fight. 2 days later, Emily was at home trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice by not calling Brian, when Olivia burst in yelling, "Emily, get out of bed right now!" Why? Because there's a man outside with a huge sign and flowers. Emily ran to the window and nearly fainted. Brian was standing on the sidewalk with a giant sign that read, "Emily Thompson, will you marry me for more than $2?" She rushed downstairs in her pajamas and slippers. "Brian, what are you doing?" "Proposing." "Here? On the street?" "Emily, $2 brought me the best thing in my life. Now I want to give everything I have for the chance to spend the rest of my life with you." He got down on one knee right there on the sidewalk and pulled a small box from his pocket. "Emily Thompson, will you marry me? No fear, no conditions. Just you and me?" Emily looked at him, at the ring, at the neighbors peeking out their windows. "Brian, are you sure?" "Completely. You love me for who I am, not what I have, and I love you exactly the way you are, brave, genuine, and completely nuts." Emily laughed through her tears. "I am a little nuts." "So? Will you marry me?" Emily looked into his eyes and saw everything she had always searched for: love, acceptance, and the promise of a life full of laughter. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." "Yes," she shouted. "Of course, yes." Brian picked her up and spun her around while the neighbors clapped from their windows. "I love you," he said, slipping the ring on her finger. "I love you too, even if you are completely crazy for proposing in the middle of the street. I learned from the best." And they kissed right there on the sidewalk, while Olivia cried happy tears and snapped pictures. $2. Who would have thought $2 could buy a happy ending? 5 months later, Emily woke up on her wedding day with a strange feeling in her stomach. At first, she thought it was just nerves. It made sense to be nervous on your wedding day. But this felt different, something she couldn't quite explain. "My favorite bride." Olivia burst into the room like a storm, carrying the wedding dress. "How are you feeling?" "Strange," Emily admitted, sitting on the bed. "Kind of nauseous, actually." "It's nerves. I'd feel sick too if I were marrying a gorgeous billionaire." Emily laughed, but the feeling didn't go away. During breakfast, which Margaret insisted on preparing herself, Emily could barely eat. "Sweetheart, you need to eat," Margaret said, worried. "You can't faint at the altar." "I know, it's just, I can't. Must be nerves." Margaret studied her carefully. As a retired teacher and a mom, she had a special instinct for these things. "Emily, can I ask you something a bit personal?" "Of course." "When was your last, Emily froze with her fork in the air. "My last what?" Then it hit her. Oh my goodness. "Honey?" Emily ran to the calendar on the kitchen wall and started counting on her fingers. "Once, twice, 3 times. "Emily?" Olivia asked, worried. "I have to go," Emily said quickly. "Now." "But the wedding is in 4 hours." "I know. That's why I have to go now." Olivia and Margaret exchanged confused looks but followed Emily to the nearest pharmacy. "Emily, are you going to explain why we're buying?" Olivia looked at the box in her friend's hand. "A pregnancy test on your wedding day? Because maybe I'm not just nervous sick." "Oh my goodness." Olivia's eyes widened. "You think you might?" "I don't know. That's why I'm taking the test." Back at the apartment, Emily locked herself in the bathroom while Olivia and Margaret waited outside like 2 anxious statues. "Emily?" Margaret knocked on the door. "Are you okay in there?" "I don't know yet. I have to wait 3 minutes." They were the longest 3 minutes of Emily's life. She stared at the test, then at the mirror, then back at the test. 2 lines, 2 bright pink lines. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness." "Emily." Olivia knocked harder. "What happened?" Emily opened the door, holding the test with the face of someone who had seen a ghost. "I'm pregnant." Margaret and Olivia were silent for exactly 5 seconds before exploding into screams of joy. "I'm going to be maid of honor." Olivia jumped up. "I'm going to be a grandma," Margaret cried. "I'm going to be a mom." Emily panicked. "On my wedding day. How do I tell Brian? At the altar? Before the altar? After the honeymoon?" "Breathe, honey." Margaret held her hands. "One thing at a time. First, let's get you ready for the wedding. Then you decide when to tell him." 4 hours later, Emily was at the altar of the small church they had chosen, radiant in her simple yet elegant gown, holding her bouquet with slightly trembling hands. Brian looked stunning in his tuxedo, his smile lighting up the whole place. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached the altar. "Brian, I need to tell you something," she whispered back. Now? Now. The minister started the ceremony, but Emily barely heard a word. "How do you tell the man you're pregnant in the middle of your wedding ceremony? If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be joined," said the minister. Emily seized the dramatic pause. "Brian," she whispered urgently, "I'm pregnant." Brian froze completely, blinked once, twice, 3 times. "What?" he whispered back. "Pregnant. You know, baby, 9 months, diapers." Brian stared at her as if processing information in a foreign language. When? Probably that night after the romantic dinner, the one Victoria interrupted. "Brian?" the minister asked. "Is everything all right?" Brian turned to the minister, then to Emily, then to the congregation of family and friends, all watching expectantly. "She's pregnant," he announced to the whole church. Complete silence. Then Margaret stood up and began clapping. "I'm going to be a grandma!" The entire church erupted in applause and cheers. Emily covered her face in embarrassment, but Brian pulled her close. "Are you sure?" he asked, his eyes shining. 3 tests, all positive. "We're going to have a baby?" "We are." Brian lifted her off her feet and spun her around right there at the altar, while everyone laughed and cried at the same time. "Brian," Emily laughed. "The minister hasn't finished yet." "Minister," Brian said, still holding Emily, "could you speed this up? I need to kiss my pregnant wife." The rest of the ceremony passed in a joyful blur of tears, laughter, and declarations of love. When the minister finally said, "You may kiss the bride," Brian kissed Emily as if it were the first and last kiss of his life. "I love you, Mrs. Miller," he whispered. "I love you too, Mr. Miller. And so does our baby." 3 weeks later, Emily was exploring the new house they had moved into after the honeymoon when she found a framed piece on the wall of Brian's office. Inside the elegant frame were the original $2 she had given him that first day at the cafe. "Brian," she called out. "Come here." He came running. "What happened? Is the baby okay?" "The baby's fine, but this," she pointed to the frame. "You framed the $2? Brian smiled that smile that always made her melt. "Of course. It was the best investment of my life." $2? "Emily, that day you didn't rent me. You set me free." "What do you mean?" "You set me free from the idea that my only worth was my money. You set me free from my fears, from my insecurities. You set me free to just be myself." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears, which was happening a lot lately. "Thanks, hormones." "Brian Miller, you are the most romantic man in the world. And you are the most amazing woman in the world. Even when you tell me I'm going to be a dad, at the altar. Hey, you said it was the best surprise of your life. It really was." He pulled her close and placed his hand on her still small belly. "You two are the best things that have ever happened to me." "Two?" "You and our daughter." "How do you know it's a girl?" "Father's intuition." Emily laughed and kissed him, thinking about how life can take the most unexpected turns. Who would have guessed that $2 at a coffee shop would lead to this? A happy marriage, a baby on the way, and the love of her life. "You know what's funny?" she said, resting her forehead on his. "What?" "People always say love doesn't come with a price, but ours did. $2. Best deal ever." And they sealed their happy ending with a kiss full of promises, laughter, and the certainty that no matter what the future held, they would face it all together. What did you think of Emily and Brian's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss any of our stories. And don't forget to check out more touching stories by clicking right here on the final screen.